All right, this is Peter Schiff, and I've come down here to Occupy Wall Street to represent the 1% and see if I can have a dialogue with the other 99%, maybe see if we can find some common ground, and maybe I can help educate the people to direct their protests to the more appropriate source, because it's my opinion that they shouldn't be here occupying Wall Street. They should be in Washington occupying Pennsylvania Avenue. They should be protesting in front of the White House, in front of the Federal Reserve, in front of Congress, in front of the Supreme Court, not down here protesting capitalism. Capitalism is the only solution that they have to their problems. It's not capitalism that has failed them, it's socialism, it's corporatism, it's crony capitalism, it's fascism. That is the problem. Capitalism is the solution if we can only fully embrace it. Anyway, we got a few people around here, and I'm wondering who in particular would like to address any of their grievances and maybe tell me what they're hoping to get from Occupy Wall Street, and maybe we can maybe come to some solutions or put them on a better path. Anyway, I don't know if you're filming the crowd. We have a question over here. All right, what's your name?
Margot.
Margot, where are you from?
Portland, Oregon.
And you came all the way here for the protest, or
Well, actually I went to Germany first.
Uh-huh.
And then I have a friend in Brooklyn, so I thought, well, I'll stop to see her.
But you didn't protest in Germany, did you?
Oh, no, that
All right,
happened
so
after you guys started here.
All right.
But I went to the book trade fair. But, I mean, I have a simple question.
Okay.
Who are you?
Peter Schiff.
Okay.
I'm a businessman. I own many companies, but one of them is a security broker dealer. Well, I have an office in Manhattan, but
Okay.
I have offices all around the country.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely in the 1%. I could be in the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah.
So I'm here,
Yeah.
and and as I said, I have a lot of sympathy for the people who are protesting.
Yeah.
But they're protesting, they're directing their anger in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Okay. So with the media, the social media.
One sec. Yeah.
And Twitter and Julian Assange and all those kind of things that are coming together, is that forms a way to have a forum, a conversation, and to getting the secrets out. There's so many secrets.
Well, did you have a question or did you have a concern?
How do you get the secrets out? Because
I don't know what secrets you're talking about. I'm trying to get the truth out and explain,
Yeah,
because I'm one of the few people in the country that actually predicted the economic crisis, the housing bubble, the financial crisis. I warned about it for years.
Well,
Nobody listened. That was the problem.
I work for state government, and I can tell you there are a lot of secrets. And it's the secrets that we don't know, and then that's hard to work against because the people who aren't inside the government don't know where the secrets are, where the gaps are.
All right.
So how do we find out?
Well, I don't know what secrets you're talking about. I'm just trying to, the secret is that it's not capitalism that's the problem here. If we had capitalism, there'd be nothing to protest. All these people would have jobs. It's because of government that people don't have anything to do. But anyway, so what's your name?
My name is Derek Brown, and I'm speaking from another perspective. We're meshing. It's people apparently from all states, nations, genders,
Where are you from,
colors,
Derek?
and creeds. I'm from the Bronx.
Okay.
Okay. I have this thing that, imagine, compassionate capitalism. Is there such a thing? Could there be such a thing?
Well, it's the most compassionate system I know, by definition.
Your definition being coming from the 1%. Now, I have no problem with you having money. The problem is there's those who are destitute and discontent with their lot in life.
Right, but what is the solution? How if you don't have money now, how are you going to get it? And how do people that have money, in a capitalist society where, people are free to spend their money where they want. Let me finish 1 second. The way a capitalist gets rich is to figure out what the consumers want and give it to them, and do it at a less expensive price, at a better quality. So the way a capitalist gets rich is by enriching everybody else.
Okay, so that's what you have to say as part of the 1%. Again, I have no problem with you having a lot of money and you having something to give and you getting what you deserve from your labors and your endeavors.
And what is your?
But my thing is, if you make 100 million, imagine how many jobs could be created if you just made 50 million.
Well,
listen, now No, when I say compassionate capitalism, I'm talking about this. People who make allowances for those who have not.
But what you're forgetting is, if I make $100 million, I had to create a lot of jobs to make that money. That's the point. When the capitalist is making money,
there's a thing called greed, and the problem with
well, we're all greedy. Everybody.
No, we're not.
Well,
you cannot say that we're all greedy.
Oh.
You cannot.
Well, don't you want things
greedy.
for yourself? You don't want more. You don't want better things for yourself.
We
better
all
life?
do, and that's the problem.
Right.
Some of us are simple people. We just want a place to live. We just want some food in our refrigerator.
And capitalism,
we just want to take care of our kids.
Capitalism is the best way to get those things. I mean, you're standing here. You're not naked. You have clothes on. The people that made those clothes did it to make a profit. And to make a profit, they had to make clothes that you can afford. Capitalism is why we have food.
It's why I didn't get these clothes for free.
But somebody made them. Somebody had to produce them.
Listen, my friend, you need to open your mind.
It is
understand that all these people are not in this park because of your perspective.
So you're saying capitalism is the only way to produce things.
Right. Well,
do you think that socialism is wrong?
It is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. But first,
why?
I employ 150 people. Hold on. I employ 150 people, right? I've created those jobs. How many jobs did you create? How many people do you employ?
How much money have I given you?
But you haven't given me anything. But my point is, I've created 150 jobs. I'm writing paychecks every week.
I haven't given you anything.
What do you?
Everybody in this park has contributed to your fat ass bank account.
How do you figure?
In one way, shape, form, or fashion.
How do you figure that?
You know something? You need to open up your mind.
Were the people in this park? Were the people in this park working 20-hour days, or when I started my company in my one-bedroom apartment? Were they there? No, they weren't.
I'm quite sure they have been.
Who?
I'm quite sure that
people are young
there's other people that you need
to
speak to.
But how are you going to get jobs unless you have capitalists that are going to employ you?
You need to open up the avenue of your mind to understand other perspectives.
And just so you know, how much of my total income right now do you think the government takes every year from me? How much do you think?
Listen,
but just guess.
I'm oblivious.
But give me a guess.
But there's other people that need to.
Does anybody here want to guess what percentage of my income the government takes from me right now?
Why we're here?
That's pretty close.
We don't play a guessing game. We have data. Give us your data.
No, but the government takes
How much do you
40.
make?
Doesn't matter what I make. The government takes half of it.
Know.
Every dollar I earn, I get to spend 45 cents. The government spends 55 cents. So the government's already taken more than half my money. I don't know how much more.
So where do you stand concerning our?
I don't lobby anybody.
Where do you stand concerning our plight?
I feel for your plight. I wish that we had a more vibrant economy. The problem is the government is taxing and regulating the economy to death. The government is not letting capitalism work. You guys are protesting all the bailouts on Wall Street. I was with you. I was against the bailouts even before they were proposed. I knew these banks were going to fail. I wanted them to fail. I didn't want the government to bail them out. That's not capitalism. Capitalism would have let the banks fail. A lot of people on Wall Street would have lost their jobs if we had capitalism. Instead,
the United States if that happened?
It would have been in better shape. We would have taken the medicine.
The world economy would have survived?
Without the government bailouts, absolutely. The economy is in trouble because of the government.
I'm here, I've been observing this for a few days. I'm actually from a libertarian mindset. I know your background, Paul, and a lot of that sort of stuff. I've actually been amazed how much overlap I saw. I saw a lot of end the Fed stuff. I saw a lot of things that actually overlap where I thought I was walking into a leftist movement. Do you see this as a left-wing movement, or do you see this more as a populist, apolitical movement?
Well, I think that people, especially young people, have a right to be pissed off because
they're getting Social Security. I'm paying all this stuff.
Well, not only that. Look, we've sold the young generation short.
Yeah.
We've put them through these government schools. We've loaded them up with debt. One of the problems people want is the forgiveness of the student loans. Why are there all these student loans? It's because the government guaranteed them. If the government minded its own business, then nobody could get a student loan.
Well, there's never been a monopoly without government involvement.
No, but my point is, if it wasn't for the government, college would be cheap. The tuitions would be low. It's only because the government subsidizes it and guarantees the loans. But who gets the shaft here? It's the kids. The colleges get all the money, and they stick the kids with a bill. They graduate with these worthless degrees with $100,000 or more in debt, and they can't get a job. And if they get a job, they're paying massive taxes. They're paying Social Security taxes to support a generation that voted in this Ponzi scheme before any of these people were born. They're paying income taxes. If there's anything left, they got to pay back their student loans, and they can't even discharge them in bankruptcy, and if they die, their parents are stuck with them. So I think, I think
the blame on government
Of course, the government did it.
Well,
it's not all the blame of the government.
Well, who else did it? Who guaranteed?
Work together. You guys are part of the
No.
same team.
Wall Street is. I agree.
Who lobbies?
No, you're right. But why are there lobbyists? Why are lobbyists successful? Because government has power and influence. The problem is the government. If the government couldn't dole out special favors and subsidies, there would be no lobbyists. So what you've got to do is take the power away from government and bring it back to the people.
Then you guys would own everything.
No, then we'd have freedom. Then we'd be a wealthy country like we used to be before the government came in and screwed it all up. We created the wealthiest society that the world had ever seen. The standard of living, you go back to 1950, the average American had a standard of living nobody can match anywhere in the world. That's not true today, because we don't lead the world in freedom. We lead the world now in big government and regulation and central banking. That is the problem. We have to go back to the Constitution. We have to go back to our roots. Of course, but why? Well, because but the government made it so expensive to hire Americans. That's the problem. All the taxes, all the laws, minimum wage, occupational licensing, payroll taxes, unemployment taxes, all the potential litigation. The government has made it so expensive and so risky to hire. Look, I hire people, right? And a lot of times I'm reluctant to hire people. I try to avoid it, because the problem is the government makes it too expensive. I know a lot of small businessmen that do everything they can not to hire people because they don't want the headache from the government. They don't want the legal liability. They don't want the government dragging them into court and suing them because they don't think they hired somebody the right way, or maybe they fired them for the wrong reason. The government is looking over the shoulder of every businessman, and it is hard enough to start a business without the government complicating it with taxes and regulations. When people start a small business, they put it all on the line. It's their money. They have to pay everybody first. They pay their employees, they pay their rent. They only make money if there's something left over. And the government makes it very hard, so people don't start businesses, and if they do, they try not to hire people because they can't take the cost. And if businesses are moving their jobs, I recently set up a bank in the Caribbean. I'm moving some of my employees to Singapore. I would rather keep all my employees here, but I don't have a choice. The government is making me uncompetitive. The rules and regulations are so expensive that the only way I can stay in business is to move part of my business to other countries. But I would rather do all my business here if it weren't for the government.
Put the mic in front of him when we speak.
I think it's the corporations that get greedy and decide that, why would we pay someone $8 an hour if we can get someone for 50 cents an hour in India? And that's why you move over, not because of government.
First of all, the corporations are just people. It's people that own stock, right? And if you go back to the 1950s, for example, America paid the highest wages in the world, much higher than we do today. Yet we produced the cheapest stuff. Our products cost less than products produced anywhere else in the world, and so we sold them all around the world. Why? How was it that we could pay the highest wages but produce the lowest cost stuff? It was because we had more capital. We had more capital because we had lower taxes and fewer regulations. So we gave our workers tools and machines to make them more productive. We don't have that anymore. We are not as productive as other countries. That is the problem. But you have to ask yourselves why. How did we have such a huge lead, and how did we blow it? What did we do wrong? And what we did wrong was more government, more rules, more regulations, more taxes that made us less competitive. That's why the jobs are gone.
So hold on. Is it safe to say that you're the only one here who's anti-government?
I don't know. There are probably a lot of people here who are. All right. How many people here blame the problems on the government?
Partially.
Would you count the Federal Reserve?
Yes, definitely the Federal Reserve. It's a big
Talk
part of
about
the
that a
problem.
little bit.
Yeah, well, it's the Federal Reserve that creates all the inflation, that destroys the value of our savings and our wages. It's the Federal Reserve that inflated the housing bubble and the stock market bubble before it.
Every bubble.
Well, yeah. What's this?
Can you speak? You're in this movie, right?
In this movie? I don't know. I don't know if I'm in that movie.
Yeah, Plunger, you're in this movie.
I am?
Danny Schechter's film.
I don't know.
Who's got Wikipedia?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm in it. I get in a lot of documentaries, so I could be in there.
What do you think of Wall Street as a crime?
If you're doing
Well, look,
such a good job,
I think-
why is America going down?
It is going down. It's going down.
I thought you 1%ers are doing such a good
No.
job.
Well, some of the 1%ers who are working on Wall Street, who are getting their money based on government bailouts and subsidies, that is the problem. They should be allowed to go broke. But there are a lot of people who are businessmen who don't get a government subsidy, who are trying to overcome enormous government regulatory hurdles and high taxes. They deserve that money. But I'm with you on Wall Street. Nobody deserves a bailout. No company is too big to fail. If someone on Wall Street gets in trouble, they should lose their money. That's how capitalism works. You take the good and the bad.
Why are there 16 million people out of work?
Well, the main reason is because the government, through the Federal Reserve, is bleeding Main Street dry to siphon money to the speculative activities going on here on Wall Street.
Why does the 1% get income going up dramatically over the last 20 years?
For the reasons,
while the average income of the average guy gone down dramatically.
Yeah, it's going down because of big government. The government is undermining the productivity of our country. Look, you're not gonna bring the poor up by bringing the rich down, right? You don't make the poor richer by making the rich poorer. You need rich people to invest their money to grow the economy, to create the products, to create the businesses, to create the jobs. If you take away the money, you get less. It's not nobility.
Lords and ladies
no.
to take care of us.
Lords and ladies, that's from government, right? I'm talking about people earning their own money from their own hard work.
You identify as a 1%er?
Excuse me?
You identify as a 1%?
Well, I'm in the 1% for the purpose of this protest.
I understand. Excuse me. We cannot have acts of violence or violations of the
I think it was the wind. I think it was the wind.
Okay, if you feel like that you're being pushed, I just wanted to invite you to, if you want to have a dialogue with us forming a spokes council or some body that we're forming, we're trying to form more official bodies. I mean, you can come here and talk to people if you want. You're free to do that autonomously. But if you'd like to meet with, we were doing it a little more structured earlier, and if you'd like to meet with us.
Well, I mean, I'm right here. If anybody wants to come and ask me a question.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm Jesse.
Sure. Hi.
Nice to meet you.
I just want to shake your hand because I've watched you a lot on, what is this for?
Well, this is Reason TV. We're just there, and they're going to put it online and try to make something out of it. But
okay, he's next. He's next right here. This guy wants to talk next.
Do you respect the fact, sir, you addressed yourself as the 1%, that all the people around you are demonstrating here against that concept?
I understand that. That's why I'm here.
Do you respect us for
If I
sitting
didn't
here
respect you, I wouldn't
and
come down
having
here.
a civilized conversation?
Of course, I understand your concerns.
Does
I'm
it-
with you.
does it-
I agree that you should be upset,
Does
but
it-
you're upset at the wrong people.
But does it show you that maybe we have some quality to be respected?
I am respecting you. If I wasn't respecting you, I wouldn't be here.
I think we're against the wrong people when we're against the same big government.
Well, the rep on the Occupy Wall Street movement is that it's an anti-capitalist movement. And my point is that we don't have capitalism. We have crony capitalism, and I'm against that. I'm with you on that. I want to get the government and the banks, I want to get them out of our lives. But a lot of people, I look at some of the grievances.
Please respect your community. We have formed a line autonomously. For me to talk to you, I formed an
hold on.
autonomous line.
Let me get this thing. Hold on to this.
I think that you'd appreciate this.
All right, what's your name?
My name is Sage.
Oh, Sage, okay, go ahead.
So in order to talk to you, I formed an autonomous line.
Okay, so where's the...
So I served my community in order to get something for myself.
Well, did you? Did they pay to be on the line?
No, what I wanted for myself was to talk to you.
All right, well, go ahead.
So what I wanted to say was, what did you want to accomplish from coming to Occupy Wall Street?
Well, I wanted to come down here because I see a protest movement, and I agree with the sentiment, and I agree with the fact that you should be protesting. It's just, my point is it's Washington that should be the recipient of the protest. You guys should be marching on the White House and the Federal Reserve demanding your freedom back, demanding capitalism, demanding liberty, fighting for the constitutional rights that you should have by birth. Not protesting this is the consequence that
I don't
down
go on
here.
the marches.
Huh?
I don't go on the marches.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Hi, my friend. Hi, how you doing? I'm talking. I'll be right back. So anyway, I've come here. I don't go to the protests. I prefer to occupy the future instead of protesting the past. I've been here since like day one, not to brag, but I've noticed that there's sort of a difference between the people that come here to occupy and the people that come here to protest. I find that the media really likes paying attention to the protest, but doesn't really like paying attention to the occupation.
I didn't know there was a difference.
Well, maybe if you spend more time here.
Well, it's my first day.
I just wanted to say that I heard you say something about money, that people pursue money. I think that when people focus on one aspect of the process, like the money aspect, that things start to get demented.
Well, they pursue money because they want the things that money can buy, but money is a yardstick to
you
show.
Think?
Well, if you're doing a business, if you're pursuing a business, and you're not making money, that means you're not creating value. The market is telling you to stop. But if you can organize labor, land, and capital and make a profit, the profit tells you you're benefiting society. You're providing. You're making economic use of resources.
I understand that you're very educated about economics, but the thing is that you were saying that people pursue money because they like what they can buy with the money. What about like the kind of people that, and the only aspect of person of that I know is that people that like collect a lot of money and then they like store it under their bed and then they die.
But no one does that. Money that's saved isn't stored. The only way you can make your money grow, if you want to grow your money, you have to make it available. You have to invest it. You have to either invest it yourself.
You're jumping into what you're comfortable in, which is your economic education.
But that's what people do.
I'm bringing it back down to a normal level. What about the kind of people, organizations of people that acquire resources, but for some mentally sick reason never figure out how to spread those resources around?
And they don't get that many. The only way to get really rich, right, is to share your wealth by investing it. Look, Steve Jobs just passed away. He made billions. How many people here have iPhones in their pockets?
I feel like what you want is...
He's not a humanitarian. He's a businessman. But he enriched the lives of millions of people pursuing his own self-interest.
I am not a ramp so that you can do an ollie in front of your camera. I actually want to have a conversation.
But anyway, I have a lot more people to talk to. So
sure enough. Let's see who's next online.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
I want to say one thing.
Right here.
I just have it has nothing to do with, like, I just want to, you seem like I've been in a search for someone, and it goes deeper than a lot of things that I can say in front of a crowd. But I believe that I was put here today because I've been a part of the occupation on and off because I am so young, and it's not really, I'm not really able to be out of certain areas. Like, I'm young, I have a curfew, I have parents, you understand? So it's like, I came out here today for the first time in a couple days, and I believe that you were put here. I believe that you were put here among other reasons for me to speak to. So if it was possible for me to have a conversation with you,
a real conversation,
conversation outside of the cameras, outside of the microphones, I'd like to have a conversation.
There's a lot of people here.
No,
that's the only problem. So.
I'll wait as long as it takes. I want to be the last person you talk to. I have a question. Okay. All right, I guess in terms of a question.
Okay, yeah.
How do you advise people who, like you say, who would like to start a business or create something, create an evolution, a revolution, who need money but are not after it at the money? The money is not the end, but it is a means to an end.
Of course, if you're going to start a business, if you don't make money, how are you going to employ people? How are you going to pay your rent? How are you going to buy your materials? What I want people like you to be able to start a business. The problem is it's very hard. You know, it's easier today for a young man to start a business in communist China than it is in America, because the government actually leaves you alone more there. There's not as much regulation. There's not as much red tape. There's not as much taxes. And when my grandparents came to this country, they didn't even speak the language. My grandfather started a small carpentry business. There were no rules, regulations, no red tape. If he hired somebody, it was just, you hired him. He just paid him cash at the end of the day. If there was any money left over, he was happy. It was easy. You can succeed in America when my grandparents came here because they didn't have all these roadblocks. I want to eliminate the roadblocks so you can have the same opportunities that he had.
I understand I understand what you're saying. I do have ways to make money. I'm a musician. My brother's a musician. That is our thing. We preach our word through our music because, like you can see here, there's senseless drumming going on there, but it draws crowds. You understand? Music is a strong vehicle to put a point across. Like if everyone...
My point is that you'd be able to pursue that craft easier and make more money doing it if the government was out of the way. Not only out of your way, but out of the ways of the people that you want to play music for.
It's not about making money.
You might want to play music in a venue, and the venue can't allow it because there's too many government rules and regulations, and they can't take the risk, and they won't hire you.
Understood.
No, it's not trusting me, it's trusting ourselves.
What I'm saying is, what about the person who needs money now? You're talking about investing. Basically I'm looking for advice to...
Well, if you have a business plan and you need money, you got to find someone like me and convince them to back you. And the thing is, though,
back him, though? That's the question.
Well,
That's
I don't
exactly
even know what his plan is.
That's why I wanted to speak to you.
You keep saying you said that the reason why he's having a problem is because the government is getting in his way. What is the government doing to stop him from starting a business? What, as far as regulations are concerned?
Well, because
what regulations is the government stopping from
there's
a small business from the beginning?
There are far fewer people that have savings and capital to invest because the government taxed it all away. So there's not as many people like me for you to talk to. But of course, if we're going to start a business and I'm going to fund it, what I have to look at is, okay, what are all the rules and taxes and regulations that we're going to have to overcome to start that business?
Right,
But it adds to the risk of the venture.
Okay,
it adds to my risk.
To get a loan from you, you're not giving him the loan because you're saying that the government is stopping you from giving him a loan.
No, I'm saying that the government is making it inherently riskier because it's going to be harder for his business to succeed and pay me back because of all the regulations and taxes.
So
and I'm saying,
because
can I say one thing?
Go ahead.
What I'm saying is you just proved my point because I came to you and I asked you to have a conversation. I asked you to review my business plan. I asked you to aid me in starting a business, and you wanted to treat me like someone who...
I'm not treating you like it, but my point is, look,
not to insult
you're right,
you, sir.
But if we start raising taxes on this so-called 1%, all we do is diminish the ability of people like you to get a loan because somebody has to save the money.
I'm not talking about a loan. What I'm talking about is I wanted you to fund my business. I presented you.
Yeah, we just met in the park. I know you for all of 10 minutes. How am I going to fund your business?
That's what I'm saying is that's why I asked you. That's why I came to you, and I didn't ask you to ask you. I didn't come here with a question. You asked me to ask you a question. I didn't come here with a question. I didn't come here with any of that. I came here to get maybe an email address, to get maybe a website.
I'm Schiff at Europac.net. Why don't you come up with a business proposal and send it to me?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Schiff at Europac.net.
Please spell that for me.
SCHIFF. I'm all over the internet. You can find me.
But I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find your email address. There might not be.
It's there. Trust me. Trust me.
Clarify one thing.
So it's what is your full name?
Well, Peter Schiff.
Peter Schiff.
Yeah.
And it's Schiff at
Europac.net.
Europac.
EUROPAC.net.
PAC.net.
Yeah, I gave you a card, but I don't think I have
My
it.
name is Reggie Alonso.
All right, well, good luck. All right, you're a nice young man.
I just want to clarify one thing before I let this guy speak. The 99% meme.
The what?
The 99% to 1% meme was just one meme out of many memes.
What's a meme?
I'm so sorry. A popular turn of phrase.
Okay.
So the catchphrase 99%. This is not 99% Park. It's Liberty Plaza. And the 99% catchphrase is not definitive of everyone here. It makes sense why a popularity meme would be popular. It's popularity itself. The phrase itself might as well be popularity.
But anyway.
But just so you know, as you come in here at the 1%, not everyone here.
I understand you have to make money, but there's got to be regulations because I believe in democracy, but I also believe in regulations. Right. The market has to grow at a sensible rate, right? It cannot grow too fast. If the market grows too fast, it will crash.
See, the regulation we want is the market. That's the regulation that works. When governments try to regulate, it screws it all up. Now let's take a corporation. If a corporation wants to sell a product, it can't sell the product for whatever price it wants. Somebody has to voluntarily buy that product. So the market determines the price of the goods that are being sold. The same thing is with labor. A corporation just can't take advantage of its workers and pay them as little as it wants because businesses compete with one another to buy labor. People are selling their labor, and so the market is going to set wages. The market is going to set prices. If the government comes in and tries to say, this is the wage that needs to be paid, all they do is end up creating lots of unemployment. They have classes of people that aren't allowed to work. No, that's a matter of fact. Well,
did a government end slavery, or did the United States government end slavery? Did a corporation end slavery, or did the government do it? Did corporations?
What does slavery have to do with what we're talking about?
We're saying there is a role for government in our society, and corporations cannot do everything.
But slavery was wrong to begin with, so let's not even. It was government that created. But government created. Wait, hold on. But government created slavery.
Okay, so you're saying that your argument is that corporations know better than the United States government or any government.
Well, first of all, corporations.
Let me finish. So what you're saying is we should disband the federal government Go back to a system before the federal government existed, where states had the rights to choose whatever laws they wanted, and then how do corporations play a role in that? Is it Walmart?
Well,
does Walmart make policy?
Well, hold on.
All of us,
First of all,
and then our senators just go
first
home?
of all, I'm
How does
saying,
that work?
okay. First of all, I'm saying go back to the Constitution. I'm not saying go back to
Constitution
prior to
was
the.
written 200 years
but
ago,
it,
and
but,
it's imperfect. That's why
well,
there has been amendments to it.
Well,
it was imperfect.
Well,
so they're called amendments
yeah,
to
but
correct things that weren't,
yeah, but
that
even
don't represent
but
what's going on now.
notwithstanding the amendments, the government is operating outside the principles of the Constitution. I want limited government, but you're what?
Saying limited to how much? How much? Where does
What?
government have a role in the lives of 300 million people?
Government is there to protect property, life, liberty, and that's it.
And
Yes,
that's it.
it's not there to redistribute wealth. It's not there when you have government do that. It doesn't work. History is filled. Well, that's because of government. The market. I'm against the bailout. The government shouldn't have done that. That was unconstitutional. Yes, the government. No, the market would work well if the government stayed out.
Do you believe that old world governments should just shut down?
No, of course not.
But a free market?
Of course not. But I mean, you mentioned Walmart. So what are you afraid that Walmart's going to do to you?
What am I afraid they're going to do to me?
What is Walmart doing?
You should go and ask the employees that are working in sweatshop type conditions that don't get enough hours, that don't have health care. How is it?
Then why don't they quit? I mean, Walmart doesn't hold a gun to their head if they can get a better job.
So why did the rape victim get raped? What was she doing out late at night?
They're not. All right, so are you offering people better? Are you offering people better jobs in Walmart? If you think people in Walmart aren't getting a good deal, why don't you offer to hire them from?
So if the people at Walmart, if the board of directors at Walmart don't see fit to, if they want to hire 40,000 people and keep most of them on as part-time employees, just for the simple fact, excuse me, let me finish. That they don't want them to work more than 40 hours, so they don't have to bring them into their healthcare system, so then they don't have to pay for their healthcare costs.
But
is that right?
But the government
to do that?
The government.
Wait. If Walmart's not going to change it, and Walmart's going to keep up, and any corporation, not just Walmart, any corporation that doesn't give and protect its employees, that pays them a livable wage, if it's not government's purpose to do that, then who is going to step in and fill the void to make sure that 300 million people are represented properly? Who does that?
It's the government that is imposing these regulations that is causing Walmart to try to get around.
If the government isn't there to do it, who is supposed to do that?
If you go back to, let's say, Henry Ford and Ford Motors Company, 100 years ago, before there were labor unions, before there was a minimum wage, before the average Ford worker was making twice what the Ford workers are making today.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and you know what? There was a lot of other imperfections in the system. Do you want to go back to 1920, 1930? What is this golden year that Republicans want to go back to?
I don't want. Well,
what year? The 60s? The 70s?
I don't want to go back to that technology, but I want to go back to that level of freedom. I want.
The level of
there was
freedom
more
for
freedom
who?
for everybody.
Women couldn't vote at some point. African Americans and others had to ride in the back of the bus. You want to go back there.
Look,
we don't want to go back.
I'm telling you, there's more economic freedom.
There was more economic freedom.
Yes,
but
a lot more.
Social freedom and social justice.
Well, what do you consider social justice?
My reparation payment right now.
There's
reparation.
I want to know.
What?
The
What?
German, the Japanese get reparation.
Hey,
Give me my own right now.
reparation? My grandparents weren't even in this country until like 1900. How am I going to get? He going to get reparations from me?
So you want to? Guys.
What you need is freedom and opportunity. That's your reparation. Do you shop at Walmart?
You don't want to.
No, I don't shop at Walmart.
Where do you buy your clothes?
You want to talk?
I don't buy them at Walmart.
Where do you buy them?
I buy them at places that aren't perfect. And I buy them.
Let me ask you a question.
But here's the thing: it doesn't.
But
You
when you
can't
shop-
just say.
But
You
here's
can't
my
just say,
question.
listen, if you ever bought something from Walmart,
No.
then your argument
Well,
just goes out the
my question.
window. If that's what you're trying to
No,
do.
but when you go shopping,
you know what I mean?
do you try to buy clothes that are less expensive, or do you try to pay more for your clothes? I mean, do you look around for a bargain?
Just bought it. I mean,
But if there were two shirts, the same shirt, one was $20 and one was $50, which one would you buy?
Come on, what kind of a question is that?
Which one would you buy?
What kind of a question
But
is
just give me an answer.
Whichever one I prefer.
No,
Whichever
they're identical. They're the same
exactly
shirt.
identical. I'll buy the one. I'll buy the one for $20.
Okay.
I'll buy the one
but
for $20.
what if the guy that made the one for $20 was paying his workers less? What if the guy that was charging $50 was paying more money?
It comes in. Now,
no, but
now all of the buts and ifs
no,
and
but now,
everything else
but my
comes
point is, are you going to pay more money to the guy that pays higher wages?
If it meant that at least 30% of the iPhone was manufactured here by American workers, I would pay more for it.
So you would
I would pay more for
How
it.
much? So
how is it possible that Apple has more money on the books than the United States federal government?
It's
you know how
easy.
it's, no, let me finish. You know how it's possible? It's a rhetorical question. Because Republicans and the business class that are in our politics saw fit to give tax breaks to all corporations and the wealthiest people so that they can starve the federal government of its taxation. You have a system. We have a system where there's corporations that have more money than the United States federal government.
Well, that's not even close.
Sounds preposterous.
Well,
but it's true.
Well,
but now let me ask you a question. Is it okay? There's been memorials for Steve Jobs all over the place, at every Apple store. There's reporters that are all around the world that never asked one single question to Steve Jobs when he was alive. Why are you manufacturing your iPhone in China and you don't have any of your manufacturing here in the United States?
And I'll tell you why. Because we
Do you think that's fair to the American people?
Wait, the American people don't own those jobs. Steve Jobs has a right to manufacture where he wants.
He does have a right to do it.
And the problem is, we have made it too expensive for him to manufacture here.
We did.
With the government.
The American workers want too much?
No,
because
the
we
government
want too much
put too
healthcare?
much.
Oh, it's the government's
Again,
fault.
remember, the reason that employers want to lower wages is because their customers want low prices. Everybody wants low prices.
Okay.
You're all
So
if
because
we
they want low prices, we
you
got
everybody in this park wants low prices. You can't have low prices.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
Yes, you do.
We're not here. We're not here asking.
So you want to pay more?
Wait a second, just to check. Is anybody out here protesting to get lower prices?
No. I'm saying you want higher prices. So you're in favor of, let's say, the cost of gasoline tripled, the cost of food tripled.
It's not going to triple. We don't manufacture gasoline here.
But
we manufacture goods here.
But given the cost that the government has built in, if these things were made here, they would cost a hell of a lot more money than they cost now.
So let's put all of the Americans out of work, right?
No.
So that's your justification for putting Americans out of work?
They're not going to be here. All the regulations you can't have.
The prices are going to
But
go
there'd
up
be
and
no
the jobs are
customers.
gonna be
There'd
here.
be no customers. Nobody would buy this stuff. It was too expensive.
What do you do?
I'm in the investment business.
Okay.
Shelter and education, not for profit.
What about it?
Water, food, shelter, and education should not be for profit.
That means you think education should be very expensive because everything that's done not for profit costs more. No, the profit is what keeps it cheap.
The current structure.
Yes. Why do you think education is so expensive?
The structure doesn't work.
Because the government is
Why
involved.
is education
Because
so
the
expensive?
government is involved.
Oh, it's the government's fault. Why is everything the government's fault?
Profits keep prices down.
Can you name one good thing that the government does for you aside from military spending or military intervention?
Pretty much, no, I can't.
So you're a person that
federal
believes,
government.
Do you believe that the federal government has a right to exist and to govern the lives of American people?
It has the right to exist, but not in the form it exists today. It's operating outside
the
the
Constitution. Do you believe the EPA should be disbanded?
I think it does a lot more harm than good.
Do you believe the FDA should be disbanded?
Yeah, I'd like to get rid of it.
What about the FDA? The Board of Education?
I think we should.
What about the Board of Education?
I want to get rid of the entire Federal Department of Education. Yes, it is wasting our money, and it is running up the cost of education.
Sir, what I've learned... No, let me finish. What I've learned over the years is to never argue with a fool, and you, my friend, are a fool.
Okay, so I'm foolish, right?
You're
so
foolish.
I just stumbled into all my wealth. I run all these businesses.
How could you disband the EPA and the FDA and the Board of Education?
Because it's not the Board
You're
of
an idiot.
Education. You're talking about the Department of
No,
Education.
no,
Did I call you an idiot? Did I call you an idiot?
No, you didn't.
All right, so I have a little bit more respect.
I'm the next president of the United States. Stand down, sir. I'm the next president. Kazoo Cruiser for presidency. Listen, it may be a joke now, but when the earthquakes take out Washington, what are y'all going to do?
The Board of Education Education is not the federal government.
It's not the Board of Education's problem to fix the planet. It's mine. We're going to build boats. As the next administrator of the free world, we're going to build boats. Now you need to listen to me.
What is your point down here?
My point is to talk to people who are protesting capitalism and Wall Street and letting them know that they should be protesting government and Washington. That is what's ruining this country.
Government equals the Wall Street.
Well, you're fired.
Yes, that's today. Yes, that's the problem. But you got to go after Washington. That's the source of it. You can't blame the companies who took the bailouts. Blame the government that bailed them out. In many ways it is, and you're right, that's a problem. But we got to take the power away from government. As long as government can dole out power, people will take it.
If you're taking the power away from government, who are you trying to give it to? If you're trying to destroy
all of us, no. If you take government out of it, you don't have to worry about a corporation. All they can do is get you to voluntarily give them your money for their products. You don't have to fear a business. You fear government. Government has power over you. Businesses don't. All businesses can do is offer you services and products.
What would you replace if the Department of Education was gone? What would you replace that with? What is there?
We had plenty of education in this country before the federal government got involved.
What's your opinion about entrepreneurship?
What's your opinion about entrepreneurship? Well, we need more of it. I'm an entrepreneur. We need more entrepreneurs. But the government is in the way of entrepreneurs.
Who the fuck is he? Who are you?
I don't know. Don't curse though. We're going
to
have to edit it out.
I've got a right to
Who am I?
speech.
I'm an individual.
All right,
Peter
you're
Schiff.
walking around like a big kid with a microphone. Nobody needs to listen to you.
Well, then you don't have to listen to me.
You're right. You need to go back to Wall Street. You need
I
to
don't
go
work
back
on
to
Wall Street, but you don't have
You're
to
dressed
stand by
just
the
like
microphone.
those pigs.
Well, I'm dressed like someone who works.
Polyester. You're a problem. You're a polyester
So what do you
pig.
want? You don't want anybody to work?
No, I don't want you wearing polyester.
Well, I don't know what. I'm not wearing polyester.
That's exactly what that is.
Don't touch him. Don't touch him. That's what
I'm making a point.
Okay, you don't have to.
Who else?
Maybe we should think about why all of my fellow veterans are coming back to no jobs, no future.
Well, you
30%
can
of the homeless people in America.
Thank the federal government, the Federal Reserve for that.
Well, we should thank not just the Federal Reserve, but the 1% that's got all the money for that.
No, but how do you
why
think
all the veterans are coming back? They're not getting treated.
No, most
They're on the street. 30% of the homeless people in America are veterans. So when everybody says we support the troops, that's a lie. You support the troops when they're out there getting killed or shot, but when they come home and they're homeless and they got no jobs, you don't support the troops.
I didn't even.
And that's why.
I didn't even support a lot of these wars that put those troops over there in the first place.
Let me
But
shake your hand. We're in agreement.
all right.
On that,
But the reason, look, the people in this country, most of them who earn their money, not a lot of the guys on Wall Street who got the bailouts. I'm with you on that. But most people around the country who earn their money deserve it, and they earned it by creating jobs and creating businesses and providing products and services here. No, here in this country too. No, all here too. Where do you think any of the jobs are coming from?
Some of those people are out here. You don't think some of those people are out here or at other occupations around the country?
Well, there are people out here.
A lot of
most
those
them out
people
here
have lost their businesses. They've lost their homes.
Yes.
You know,
yeah, because of the government. Because the big government.
We're all in the same boat together.
Right, and what we got to do
is we got
to dismantle this big federal government that is destroying the economy. Right, then we can all swim together. We can all, capitalism will lift all boats.
We need a revolution. Is what we need.
Yeah.
We need an American revolution.
Hey, I'm with you. Hey,
we're working on that.
I ran for Senate last year. I didn't win though, but I tried.
But remember, Matt. My fellow veterans, they need to be taken care of.
You don't want to take away the only reason you want to take money away from the federal government is to steal the rest of the money that you didn't steal already.
No, the federal government is the one that's stealing money from the people who earned it. I want to leave the money with the people who earned it, and they can use it to grow the economy, to create the jobs.
You just want to take out whatever left that the 1% didn't already.
No, what money did I have that I take? How did I take money?
You personally. I'm talking about the 1%.
What do you do for a living?
I work for the state.
Huh? All right. Well, I mean, I work for myself. I have a company, but I've made money because I have 20,000 customers who gave me their money voluntarily. I didn't force anybody to give me money.
Like Wall Street, the corporations that are running our economy.
Well, that's the problem. They shouldn't be.
And they're
able to
running
run
our
it.
government.
But why are they? Because the government
it's
has
crony
the power.
capitalism. It's not capitalism.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
you got it. We got it because government gave it to them. We got to take it back by We got to take the power away from government so they can't give it out to their friends in banks or corporations. We want the corporations to get money who earn it without any political connections, without any special subsidies. We want them to earn the money because they produce the products and the services that we want at the prices that we want to pay. And in the process, they create jobs.
They're the ones bankrolling the campaigns. That's what you're saying you're against the federal government, you wanted to change and all that, but you guys are the ones, or at least these guys here on Wall Street are the ones that are funding all the campaigns and putting these people in power in the first place.
Right, but
and then you do so because you know that they will enact policies that you want, and then you also know that once they do that, and you become friends with them through campaign fundraising and all that.
That is the problem.
That they will let you in the government, and you'll be like, hey, can I be Secretary of the Treasury?
No, that is the problem. See, because Washington has so much power, there's lobbyists because people are peddling their influence, and corporations are trying to get the benefit of that power. But as long as the government is there with power, people are going to lobby to have it used in their interest.
The government is there to begin with, and it's supposed to have power to take care of the affairs of the country.
No, it's not.
But what's not supposed to happen is that a small group of citizens with a certain amount of money are able to walk right into the government and then sit and then sit
the government is here
in the White House and sit in all these positions.
The federal government is here to be small and inconsequential. It's supposed to defend us from abroad, but it's supposed to.
Smaller, you get in even easier.
No. If they had no power, there'd be no lobbying. There'd be nothing to give out. We don't want the government to be able to pick winners and losers, to say you get a bailout and you don't, you pay a tax and you get a subsidy. That is the problem.
Actually make those decisions are the guys here once they get in government, because they put themselves in the government with the money that they
right.
They buy those seats. The Secretary of the Treasury.
I want to. We got to protest that process, but it begins. No, but it begins in Washington. That's the source. No, you got to cut off the head of the snake.
Stop buying seats in the government and stop enacting these policies. Stop deregulating everything so that you can do whatever you want.
But as long as government can give out special favors, people are going to lobby to get them. You got
yes. These guys basically kick the door down and are like, "Yo, we funded your campaign. You better let us in there, or else we're not going to fund your campaign next time around." And it's already happening. Because the guys here are angry at Obama for trying to regulate them a little bit, so now they're giving all their money to Mitt Romney.
There's already too much regulation. Are you kidding me? In the financial industry, we're regulated to death. Because the
regulations that were rolled back in the 90s were still in place, we wouldn't have had this crisis.
The government caused the crisis with all the regulations. Look, I started my brokerage business in 1996, right? I'll get to that. I started my firm in 96. There is no way, with all the regulations that exist today, I could have started. It took me almost 3 years to get permission from regulators to hire people. I was on a hiring freeze. It cost me $1 million or more in legal bills to get the
regulations we're talking about are the ones that allow these banks to get so huge.
That was government.
And then allow them
government did that.
Create all these instruments, these financial instruments that
yes.
are actually highly dangerous.
Yes,
and that cause
I agree. The Federal Reserve did that, and the government did that.
It's not the politicians that are sitting around being like, oh, you know what? Let's regulate too much just so that these guys can crash the economy. It's because it's the guys here that are fundraising.
I mean, do you know that I was? Do you know that for years I was on television and writing books warning about all the things that have just happened? I warned about the housing bubble. I warned that it was going to crash. No, well, I can't. I tried. Those people don't listen to me in Washington, but I warned.
And now that's what we're doing. We're telling them to stop.
But I understood how the government created the problem. You're talking about Glass-Steagall. The reason that we had Glass-Steagall was to counteract the damage of government-insured bank accounts. The problem is the government shouldn't be insuring bank accounts. Yes, I know. But we shouldn't insure bank accounts, and then I know because we shouldn't be insuring bank accounts.
Why shouldn't we insure bank accounts?
Because. Do you have a bank?
Because of bank runs.
No, wait. Do you have a bank account?
Yes, I have a bank account.
Do you care what the bank does with your money when you deposit it there? Do you care about the loans?
I do.
Why? Do you worry?
Because I don't want them to gamble with it. And all these securities.
No, but
all these securitizations created out of absence of government.
If the bank gambles with their money and loses, does it affect your deposit?
Of course it does.
How? It's insured by the government.
If you take out Glass-Steagall, they use that money.
Nobody in this area that has a bank account has ever looked at the bank's portfolio to see what kind of loans they're making. Nobody cares. No.
Does that make it okay?
No. You. So.
Are you personally benefiting from the Bush tax cuts? That's what I want to know. You're part of the 1%. Because I don't think anyone else here is benefiting from
I don't benefit from tax cuts. The government benefits from the money that I earn that they tax. That's my money. I earned it.
I'm probably doing better.
But I earned it. The government has no right to it.
I'm like this young man. I care what they're doing.
They have the right to tax for the general welfare and defense of this country. They don't have the right to take money from me and give it to somebody else. That's it. We're a
country, not individuals.
But we're a collection of individuals, and individual rights are supreme.
Unfortunately,
to protect our rights, not to steal from us.
taxation protect us the people who do.
It is. If it's for the wrong purposes, if the government, I didn't sign a contract with. I've got inalienable rights.
We're in the 1%.
No.
And we're in the 99%.
Well, what? Wouldn't you like to get into the 1%?
No,
you don't want more money. You don't want. If I offered to put you in the 1% right now, you'd turn it down?
And I would pay my share and get rid of the Bush tax cuts immediately.
What do you?
Immediately.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Hold on.
Buffett and his
No.
secretary.
What?
I would
Let me ask
pay
you a
my
question.
fair
Let me ask you a
So
question.
that these folks
Hold on.
could pay their student
me ask you a
loans,
question.
could get off of food stamps, could be successful,
question.
just
Wait,
like you.
wait,
What are you
hold on.
driving?
Hold on.
They don't have a
Hold on.
car.
What do you think my fair share is? What % of my income do you think would be
Get
fair?
rid of the Bush tax.
No. Don't just give me a percentage. No. What percent?
Marginal.
So you think it? Hold on.
He's a
What do you
CPA. Ask
think?
the tax
What do
guy.
you think would be
Ask
fair?
the tax
if it
guy.
would be-
What's
if
fair
it-
for his clients?
What do you think is fair?
National average runs close to 17%. A whole bunch of people, about 50%,
Okay,
don't pay
but how
any
much do you
taxes.
think I should pay? What would be fair for me?
I don't know what your
Sir,
income is. I
sir.
can't tell you that.
Well, what do you?
I believe in a progressive income tax. That is
What should
fair.
I pay? Okay, well, I love. All right, I'm paying over. All right, well, that would be a huge tax cut for me. I pay much more than 35% of my total income in tax.
What do you think of the
Less than
Buffett
me,
plan?
and I employed her.
Well,
Buffett is full of it because Warren Buffett is the biggest shareholder in Berkshire Hathaway, so he's paying a 35% tax on his profits. Sure, it affects him. He has to pay it.
No.
Not,
Well,
I thought it's on paper.
But I'm paying. I
Effective at 15%.
am giving the government half of what I earn. You think they should take more?
I think we should get rid of the Bush tax cuts.
But that means I would be paying more than half of what I earned to government.
There's no way you can cut all the expenses you want
And
without
meanwhile-
increasing revenue. There's no way to fix
And
this
meanwhile,
problem.
if you raise my taxes, maybe I'll just decide to sell my business and fire 150 people.
Well, if you've
Why
got-
should I work for free?
If you've got 20,000 clients, you're doing much better than anyone else here.
But why
Than
should I?
anyone
Wait,
else
do
here.
you think? Wait, hold on.
Want to share your success?
Do you think I should work for you or for myself?
Well, I'm like you. I'm an entrepreneur. I want you to work for yourself.
Right, but if the government.
But you started out with 2 clients before you had 20,000. You should want to help the next guy.
I am helping the next guy. I'm helping them. I'm helping my clients by giving them services that they want. I'm employing 150 people. How many people do you employ?
I'm in the mortgage business. I wish I employed 150
Well,
people.
let's stop. Well, go do it.
The problem is that
I'm doing it. I'm doing my share. Why aren't you doing yours?
Unregulated.
And in fact, I'm probably paying more income taxes than everybody around me combined. So I'm paying more than my fair share right now. I'm picking up the slack for a lot of people.
Who can verify
But
that?
then GE didn't pay any taxes.
Well, look. First of all, we should get rid of the corporate income tax because corporations don't pay taxes. Either their workers pay taxes, their customers pay the tax, or their shareholders. And a lot of the shareholders are elderly people who are trying to live off their retirement savings. Or people.
Pay taxes if they
No.
are supposed to be considered
Huh?
individuals.
Tax people on the individual, the corporate level is a ruse. They're not paying the taxes. They're passing them on.
Yeah,
And you're
but the whole
talking
point
about
is
the
that
poor,
they're
these poor
supposed to be
students. Hey, I'm the one that wants to get rid of all these student loans. I don't want the government loaning money to kids to go to college. I don't want them guaranteeing. Nobody. I want tuitions to come down because.
New Zealand than for me to stay here and go to college.
But you know what? If the government stopped subsidizing student loans, the universities would have to slash the prices, and then you can afford to go. You wouldn't need a loan.
Okay.
That's what
Thank
I
you
want.
for the answer.
I want quality
I don't have
education.
a lot of education to argue on these matters, so I am here to educate myself. But my problem is that a lot of people here don't trust corporations. When we give them money back, they say we'll hire more people. Instead, what we have seen is that they take that money and use it to influence government to help themselves.
Because government has the power to dole out. We got to take away the power. But corporations, hold on. Corporations are nothing to fear. All they can do is offer you a product or a service. It's up to you whether or not you want to buy it. They can offer you a job. You don't have to take it. You can work for somebody else. You can work for yourself. You don't have to fear a business
job out there.
Well, then aren't you glad the corporation is there to give you one because there's nothing better out there?
Yeah. Yes. Why not? That makes sense.
No. How are they taking away jobs? Where do you think jobs come from?
When they crashed the economy,
It was crashed because
everybody started doing job cuts. All these corporations were doing job cuts. Even Wall Street.
Here's my question though: where did jobs come from in the first place?
Money they buy. That's where jobs come
No,
from.
no, they don't come from consumers. Where do
Your company couldn't.
No, where do those consumers get the money? Where do the consumers get the money?
They get the money from working.
Yeah, so the jobs come first, the goods come second.
Yeah, but
after
that,
you're taking all the jobs out, and you're not reinvesting in America, right?
But why are we doing that?
Because the labor's cheaper over there.
No, because the regulations are higher over here. The taxes are higher. Yes, yes, yes.
One more question. Do you believe that Franklin Delano Roosevelt did what he had to do in 1939? Government intervention?
No, he caused the Great Depression. Yes, by doing exactly what Herbert Hoover did. He was the Barack Obama of his day. The reason we had a Great Depression was Roosevelt. He didn't save it. He almost destroyed it. No. Hoover is, the socialists want to blame it. Hoover did the wrong thing. Hoover was like George Bush. He tried to prop everybody up, bail everybody out. Hoover was not a capitalist.
Okay, who are you?
Peter Schiff.
And what do you represent?
The 1%.
Okay, and what is it?
Well, the people who everybody supposedly here wants to tax and regulate in order to theoretically improve the economy.
So are you with some TV station or what?
No, I'm not with a TV station.
My question is, where does the 1% fit in the picture of the crisis that we just went through? So you're saying that it's all the fault of the government. What's their role?
My point is, look, if taking money away from the 1% to suspend it is going to hurt the economy. We need capital to grow the economy. We need investments. We need savings. We need production. We need more machines. We need more factories.
What role did Wall Street play in this crisis in your
No, they played a big role. Wall Street drank the alcohol that the Federal Reserve poured. But if there was no Fed pouring the alcohol, if Fannie and Freddie weren't guaranteeing all these mortgages, Wall Street wouldn't have originated them. So it was Wall Street working with government. But the source of the problem was government. Government started. That's how come when I was warning about the crisis back in 2004 and 2005, begging the Fed to raise interest rates, trying to get Fannie and Freddie out of the mortgage guarantee business, nobody wanted to listen to me.
No, it's corporate money that's in politics currently that is controlling the system. That's why you guys have the power you do.
I don't have any power.
Plus, World War II is most powerful.
But I don't have any power. I'm as powerless as you.
World War II is most probably what brought us out of that depression, and we came out shining because the rest of the world was
actually.
But after that, the interest or the tax rates on the very wealthy were extremely high, and we had an amazing golden era of prosperity in this country.
Let me tell you,
you did not suffer. Plus, you employed many more people than the sector does currently.
Okay,
the financial sector does nothing but manipulate money.
Well, I agree. We need to shrink the financial sector. It gets too much government subsidies. But what ended the Depression was the end of the Second World War, when the government stopped all that spending. It wasn't the war that got us out. It was ending the war. But yes, there were very high taxes after the war, but nobody paid them. There were so many loopholes. Nobody paid those high taxes. People like me are paying much higher taxes today than people were paying in 1945, 1950. In fact, nobody even paid withholding taxes. The average person didn't even pay income taxes until 1943. That's when the withholding tax came in.
My history states that the tax rates were 70, 80, 90%.
The rates were there, but nobody paid them. Nobody had that income because there were so many deductions, nobody had to pay them. Now the average person is paying a much higher rate of tax, the average wealthy person. Let's say somebody who's making $5, $10, $20 million a year. If you made the equivalent of that in the 1950s, you paid a lower tax because you had so many deductions, you had no taxes. Now, well, I make money for my clients. I get money from my clients.
Doesn't it come from capital gains?
No, it comes from ordinary. Some of it comes from capital gains,
so
but
you're paying 15% on capital gains.
But most of my income is in my business, and there I'm paying 38% federal, 7% to the 7. Yeah, well I'm paying it on my total income. You're only paying it on your marginal income.
Peter, let's talk. What is the solution? These poor children are in the cold. If your children in this position, would you like to see your children in this condition?
The solution.
Look at the wind blowing.
The solution is freedom, capitalism, liberty. The Constitution. That's what we need. Free people can succeed, they can prosper. If the government just gets out of the way and lets it happen.
You would not have come here and done this today unless you were a go-getter. And I guarantee you would have been go-getting with a higher tax rate on you, just as you are now. No. You would have made your dad proud. You would have shown how tough you are. You would have been the big guy on the block right now. And we would have helped you do it. But we would also have taken some of the money from you and spread it around, unlike what's going on.
Here's the problem. The money that you take from me is the money I would use to grow the economy. Any money that's taken from me and said, but no, that's
not what you're doing. You're gambling.
No.
You're gambling. This is not 1960 when we're investing in GM, and GM is good for whatever is good for GM is good for the United States. That's not it anymore.
I'm not gambling. I say I'm just helping my clients invest money. Wall Street gambles with money from the Federal Reserve. They're the ones that are trading and proprietary trading. I don't do that. But I agree. I agree that because of the Fed and because of the government, money that should be invested is being gambled instead. That is the problem. Washington is helping Wall Street bleed Main Street dry.
Cronies like Bill Clinton, who got rid of Glass-Steagall, with corporations and the power of money behind him, are what drives you guys. It's a chicken and an egg and a chicken.
Right. But it's not. But remember, the money that grows the economy is the money that isn't spent. It's savings that drives economic growth. And when you tax the businessman, you're taxing his savings, you're diminishing his ability to grow the economy, to grow his business, and you're sending money to Washington where it's squandered on consumption and government bureaucracy. That's what's destroying the country. You know what the richest county is now in the United States? Washington County. It's now wealthier than Silicon Valley. Because it's all the money going to the bureaucrats. They're raising their pay. All the lobbyists are getting rich because the government is doling out all these favors. Take away the power of government, and you bring the power back to the people.
What increased in the last 5 years? Is your income going up or going down in the last 5 years? How much money do you make, and is it increasing?
I think it's increasing, but what's your point? Yeah.
Why is everyone else's annual income stagnating?
Because, well, a lot of it is because of inflation that the Federal Reserve creates to prop up failing banks or to prop up the government to pay for the social welfare state. But the reason that the middle class is suffering is because the government is destroying the economy. Capitalism benefits most the middle class and the lower class, but we don't have it anymore. That's the problem.
How can you how can you say that it's just the federal government when the people that were in the government, like Ronald Reagan, Secretary of the Treasury, was Don Regan. He was the Secretary of the Treasury then. In the Clinton years, there was Secretary of Treasury Rubin, and these guys were head of Goldman Sachs, head of Citigroup, and so these are the people that are actually making these economic
Remember,
policies.
I agree with you on this. I want to get Wall Street's influence out of Washington.
So this is what this is about.
But when you're talking about businessmen, you're lumping everybody in the same category as Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan and Morgan Stanley. They're not. Right?
All the transactions that are risky are happening right here on Wall Street.
Yeah, and they're happening with government subsidies. Take those subsidies away. Take the cheap money away from the Fed.
While people in D.C. are protesting at the White House or at Capitol Hill, we here in New York are protesting Wall Street because, like you just agreed with me, they go hand in hand. They're accomplices. They're in bed together. But the people that are in government making these policies came straight from here, went to the government, and then come right back here to make even more money after the policies that they passed
but I'm
that are helping them.
Protesting here ain't going to do anything.
Why?
It's
We're
because
letting them know.
because but they don't care. As long as government
Then we should even protest more.
As long as government has goodies to hand out, Wall Street's going to want its share. Stop the government from giving out.
Create the goodies. They're going to go in government in order to make the laws.
But if you take the government out of it, then the only way they can make money is by benefiting everybody else. Right now, they're making money at the expense of other people because they got their government doing their dirty work.
If there was no government at all, then
no, I'm not saying no government at all. I'm saying limited constitutional government.
Would not change much because it might even be easier for them to
but there'd be no door to get into. The only way they can get money is
the government. There'll be a door to get into.
Who should we protest then?
The White House, the Federal Reserve, Congress, Supreme.
Why does that matter when either way we've started a global thing here and people are really seeing the idea? Doesn't matter where it is when the idea is still getting
But what we need to be protesting is government. We want our freedom back. We want our prosperity back. And we're not going to get it from government. We're going to get it from ourselves, from capitalism, from individual entrepreneurship. That's what we need. We need the values that the founding fathers bestowed on us. We need to go back to that.
I agree, but I believe you're stuck on the synecdoche of Wall Street. It doesn't matter that it's Wall Street. Because we're protesting here, it's still getting seen everywhere else.
The rap on this movement is that it's anti-capitalist, anti-business, that you guys are all walking around with copies of the Communist Manifesto in your pocket.
That's not true at all.
All right, well, clear it up.
I've seen so many Ron Paul supporters and libertarians here, you'd be surprised. You sound like a libertarian yourself, right?
Well, that's what I think.
You sound like a libertarian yourself, right? There's marchers saying end the Fed. Exact same things you're saying. You actually sound like a supporter. You sound like a supporter. The basis of this movement.
Yeah, why was the economic advisor when he ran for president in 2008?
The basis of this movement, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's great. Right. The basis of this movement, right, is that the Wall Street and the government are too closely tied together. And you sound like you're against the same issue. So I really don't see what you're down here trying to explain. Like, can you?
Because I want to make sure. Yeah, but we have to focus our anger and our outrage on the government that's made it all possible.
Federal Reserve is like
what's happening. Yeah, what's happening on Wall Street is a consequence of this power emanating from Washington. You got to cut off the head of the snake. So that's how you kill it.
Should we not protest here? Should we go?
Of course. Who wouldn't want a bailout? If the government came and offered to bail you out, you'd take it. The problem is the government shouldn't be able to offer the money. Look, I wanted every bank that bet wrong to fail.
If Ron Paul is so different, how come he always casts his vote with the Republicans?
What?
If Ron Paul is that different, how come he always casts his vote with the Republicans?
He doesn't always. He doesn't always.
He's very independent. He's very independent.
For medical doctor, wait. For medical doctor, how come he says that if a person has no medical care, you might as well drop dead?
That's not what he said.
That's what he said.
No, he didn't. I listened to it.
No.
What Ron Paul said.
If you have no health care, you might as well drop dead.
No. First of all, before the government got involved in health care, there was much more access and it was much less expensive. And what happened was Ron Paul pointed out that when he was a doctor a long time ago, doctors took care of the poor for free. Nobody died if they were sick. The problem is the government has run up the cost of health care so much through the tax code, through Medicare, through Medicaid. Anything the government touches, it ruins. It drives up the price. It drives down the quality.
Obviously, he never took the Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah, I wish the government would take the Hippocratic Oath and do no harm.
Paul should take, because he casts all his votes with the Republicans. So he
doesn't cast all his votes with Republicans. No, he's the most independent voter out there. Check his record. Check his record.
You're stuck then. How do we live? Yes, we need corporations to a certain extent. We need business to a certain extent. We need government to a certain extent. But now you're stuck. Where does one go? Like, what is the limit? What is the limit on business? What is the limit on government? Where do we put those limits?
First of all, corporations are simply businesses that incorporated. And corporations are just individuals that got together to run a business. I mean, that's all they are.
Individuals? Should they have corporate personhood?
Well, there are legal rights that a corporation has as a fictitious person, but apart from that, they're people. Yes, it's fair.
Why?
Because what the corporate structure does is it enables businesses to raise more capital and grow bigger because you shield the shareholders from some of the liability.
So
you make it.
Interest of the shareholders?
It's in the interest of the whole economy because it makes it easier for businesses to expand and make the investments necessary. No. They only do that because the government forces them to, because the taxes and regulations are too higher. Because remember, the corporations owe an interest to their shareholders. That's what they are. They're just like you. They're not there to serve society. They're there to make a profit. But the result is that they end up serving society through the invisible hand.
That's very short-sighted, my friend. The reason why is because, yes, it helps the shareholders in the very near future, right? But where are we now? This whole shit show is because of the fact that people weren't thinking long term, and now
they weren't because the government got them all liquored up with cheap money and government guarantees. And you know what? It's going to get a lot worse. You guys ain't seen nothing yet. Wait till you see how much worse it's going to be in a year or two. There's going to be more unemployment, and then you're going to start to see prices really go up as the dollar collapses in value and food gets a lot more expensive. Healthcare.
Wait, time out. You're still saying that the government is totally the only person to blame. However, corporations are still complicit in their guilt if they're the ones that are doing what's ever cheaper for their shareholders.
Look, a lot of people on Wall Street acted recklessly, and they should have been held accountable. They should have been allowed to lose money. They shouldn't have been bailed out. But my question is, why did they do these foolish things? President Bush said Wall Street got drunk. He was right. They were all stinking drunk. But the question was, where did they get all that alcohol? Why were they drunk?
But you're blaming the alcoholic for being enabled.
No, I'm blaming the bartender for liquoring them up. I'm blaming Alan Greenspan. I'm blaming the Fed and the government for doing it.
Aren't they both at guilt, though? They're both at guilt, and you're just saying, no, only one is at guilt.
I'm not excusing them.
Okay.
But I'm saying that if you want to stop the behavior, you got to go to Washington. You got to cut it off at the source. And you can't say it's capitalism. If people are saying capitalism is failing, it's not working, we haven't even tried it in decades. We need capitalism. That's what does work. We know that works.
Right now, what about the fact that 18 of the members of the board that have connections to the bailouts, 18 members of the Federal Reserve Board that have connections to the Federal Reserve are sitting right now on companies that receive part of the $700 billion TARP bailouts? What about the conflict of interest that exists between Wall Street and the Federal Reserve?
You're 100% right. It's a disgrace. You know, when I was on television, when they first proposed, I was against TARP. I said, look, if there's a bank that is going to fail, you let it fail. You let the shareholders lose money. Let the bondholders lose money. Because if you bail them out now, it's a moral hazard, and we're just going to get more of that bad behavior in the future. You know, capitalism means private losses and private profits. It doesn't mean private profits and socialized losses.
That's exactly Wall Street and the Federal Reserve. Can you help educate people here as to why we believe there's a conflict of interest between the interests of Wall Street and the Fed?
Well, the problem is the banks are keeping interest rates artificially low to prop up the speculative activity on Wall Street. What we actually need in this country is higher interest rates, not lower interest rates, because that'll take the money out of Wall Street, put it back on Main Street. Businessmen can't borrow money at these low interest rates. It's all going to the government through guaranteed debt, through the treasury market, through the corporate bond market. There's no real capital available for Main Street, but if we let interest rates go up, number one, people will stop spending and start saving again because they can get a decent interest rate on their savings, and there'll be more capital on Main Street to fund new businesses, to produce things here, to hire people here. But of course, if we want to do all that, we need to get the government to repeal a lot of the rules and regulations that have artificially increased the cost of doing business and hiring people in this country.
Wait, I want to understand, because you seem to agree.
Hold on, someone else. Who's new? Who hasn't asked me? Hold on.
Yeah, I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. I flew in today, and deregulation is what caused this mess. In Wisconsin, when we had 150,000 people in the street marching against Governor Scott Walker, I personally was integral in occupying our state capitol. And I got to tell you, he was funded by the Koch brothers. They're selling off our state. They're cutting wages. They're shipping in low pages and unbenefited jobs. You're sitting on trillions and trillions of dollars of wealth and not investing it back in the
Hold on. Which regulations do you think that were repealed caused the crisis?
Let's start with Glass-Steagall. Let's go back to Glass-Steagall.
Okay, that's one regulation. But you know how many other regulations were passed? In addition to that, they have net piled on a lot more regulations. So they repealed
tax rate for the top 1% back to where it was when they made more than $2 million. That next dollar was taxed at 74%.
Wait a minute.
How about we do that?
So you think that the government should take 74% of my money?
I think if you're making more than $2 million, I think that's when we had the biggest growth in the economy is when it discouraged millionaires from paying themselves huge bonuses. They reinvested it back in their companies. They created jobs for the workers, and instead they sit on their cash now, and they let the rest of us drown in debt and then sit on the street and go homeless, and it's ridiculous.
So you think that I should pay 70% of my income above $2 million in tax?
$2 million a year?
Yes. Do you
I
think?
think your next dollar should be taxed at 74%.
Okay, so if that's the deal, you know what I would do? Once my income got to $2 million, I would stop working for the year. I would furlough my employees and say, you know what? I've made my limit. I'm not going to work for 30 cents on the dollar. I'm playing golf. I'm going fishing. I'll see you next February. How about that?
How come that didn't apply in the 1970s and 1960s?
Because nobody paid those taxes back then. You know how many? I would much rather.
The economy was booming when the effective tax.
Because no one paid those high taxes.
Direct correlation with the national debt and the lowering of the effective tax rate on the wealthiest people in this country. You're not fooling anybody.
Well, first of all,
statistics. We've all read it. Okay. There is no such thing as trickle-down economy. The only thing that trickles down is you guys.
The income tax didn't even start until 1913. So before that, there were no income taxes at all, and we built the wealthiest country in the world. We had the Industrial Revolution.
The Great Depression.
We know though.
What are you talking about?
No.
1913. We had the Great Depression.
No,
because it was the lowest effective tax rates. That's why we had Hoover bills. Because we were taxing
well, first of all, the
wealthy.
Depression was in the 30s, not 1913.
That's when
But
it began because there was no income tax rate on the wealthy.
the income tax is not why we had a depression. What happened was the Federal Reserve printed too much money in the 1920s. They created a real estate bubble and a stock market bubble. And then when it burst, Herbert Hoover, instead of letting the free market work, came in with all this government props and bailouts and tried to interfere. And he created the depression. And then Roosevelt made it great by interfering even more by taking Hoover's entire plan and expanding it.
Wrong.
No.
That's wrong.
You only think it's wrong because you got brainwashed in a government school.
I didn't bring them up. I can read studies from the economic policy.
Well,
I mean, it's pretty simple.
You haven't read any of my stuff.
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this right now. When FDR raised the effective tax rate for millionaires throughout this country, we saw the biggest expansion of the middle class and elimination of poverty in this country. We saw growth.
You're just making this stuff up. This is just revisionist history.
Well, what are you
All right,
talking
let's talk about now.
The suburbs
No.
in America, when were they built?
How would taking money away from businessmen, let's say the government was going to take 70% of my income away, the income that I would use to invest
Not your income after you make
Right.
$2 million.
Right. So that is the money that I would.
$2
Okay.
million.
Okay. So the money that. So let's say I'm making 10 million. The government says, okay, we're going to take 7 million away from you. Right. And now, how is that going to help the country by taking money away from me that I might have invested in growing my business?
Yourself that money and sitting it in some bank account across seas, you're going to reinvest it in the
No, but what do you think? What do you think the banks do with the money? They loan it out to businesses. Where do you think credit comes from? If you take money away from the people who earn it and save it and send it to Washington, it's going to get squandered, and you're going to destroy the incentives to grow the economy.
lowered the tax rates in the 1980s, and they effectively went down. You see a decline you see an increase in the national debt, and you see a decline in
That's
the
because
middle class.
no, but that's because the government kept spending money. You can't blame the problems on the tax cuts.
I know.
You got to blame them.
We should spend money on the homeless and the poor and the sick. We should.
That's not where the money was going.
I just want to say something real short. I'm also at 1%, and I think you're making us look really bad.
How do you figure?
Because I think your facts are wrong, your logic is wrong. I don't
my-
want to get into a long discussion, but I don't think that you're helping.
Well, my facts aren't wrong, but as a member of the 1%, what do you think? Do you think your taxes should be raised?
Yes, I do.
Well, I mean,
and for a long time, you know what happened?
what percent of your income do you pay in taxes?
10%.
All right, well, you're not in the 1% because I'm paying 50%. So you're only paying 10% in taxes?
It has to do with how you invest your money, doesn't it?
Well, I'm not paying 10%. I'm paying 50. All right, well, how would you like to pay 50% like me?
I would.
Oh, really? Well, then why not write a bigger check when you pay your taxes instead of paying 10%?
I would be I think.
Well, no one's stopping you from paying more taxes.
Excuse me, can I do this? Can I do this? I want to tell you something. After World War II, do you know what the tax rate was? Do you know what the marginal tax rate was after World War II?
It got up to 90%.
It was 90%.
Yeah, but nobody paid it. But before 1913, it was zero.
Yeah, and for many, many, many years until recent history, it was around 70%. It has only come down from 70% over the last 20, 30 years.
Yes, but there were
many years people did not go play golf when they got to 70%. They did not go to the beach. They kept working.
They didn't pay. No, nobody paid. Nobody actually paid the 70%. There were so many loopholes and deductions.
I'm glad you're talking, but I think there's many other 1%ers who would strongly disagree with you.
I can tell you this. Most people that make a lot of money, they're not going to work for 30 cents on the dollar. They're going to enjoy their free. You don't know anybody who works for 30 cents on the dollar. You know people who are going to work their butts off to keep 30 cents?
I spent a lot of time in Europe, and trust me, there's a lot of people who work very hard there, and marginal tax rates are...
No, they're not. They're not paying those kind of taxes. They're not.
Not true. I lived in Europe. There are plenty of people in Europe who believe in investing in the state and being good citizens. You're shooting American exceptionalism, this American exceptionalism line that you're some kind of special cat. You're not, man. But the reason that I'm here has nothing to do with the history of income tax in this country, and it has everything to do with the fact that no one has been held responsible for the financial folly that brought this country down.
We should hold some of these people, like Alan Greenspan, like Senator Chris Dodd or Senator Barney Frank, or we should hold some of these people. Instead, we promote them. Look at Tim Geithner. He was the head of the New York Fed, and now we made him Secretary of the Treasury.
Let's take turns talking, okay? Yeah, let's bring somebody down. I don't know who it is. You seem to have very strong ideas about who you think it is, but let's bring somebody to justice.
Well, I've got a lot of credit.
The law, I go to jail. If the CEO of Chase breaks the law, he gets a bonus.
Well, I agree with you. But I have a lot of credibility on this because I wrote a book predicting the financial crisis, the bursting of how the crash proof. So, well,
write a book about the downfall.
no, it was very hard to do because very few people did it. Are you kidding me? People were laughing on me on national television when I told them what was going to happen.
Look at the ones that came up before 2007.
Yeah, very few people predicted this. And I predicted it because I understood how government policy was creating the problems.
Promoting your book. All I'm saying is that somebody needs to be brought to justice.
I agree. I agree with you.
Any other questions?
Hold on.
Are you going to come with us on our next Occupy the Fed march?
I don't know. Who's going to be there?
A lot of people. We already had one. We started here. We're trying to educate the people here because they didn't know that the Fed is a lot of the problem, printing the money out of thin air, backed by nothing.
The Fed is a big part of the problem. And in fact, if it wasn't for the Fed, the government couldn't spend all this money because the Fed is buying up all these bonds, which is allowing the government to plunge the people deeper into debt and is preventing the economy from correcting itself. We have got serious structural economic problems, and we're only making them worse. And the Fed is helping the government make it worse by buying up all those bonds. Because what's growing right now is not our economy, but our government. And the bigger the government gets, the poorer we all get because we have to support that government.
So they're like the drug dealer. I mean, that's all they're doing is supplying the...
We're addicted to cheap money, and they keep feeding the addiction, and we're going to overdose if we don't change.
Okay, so 11/22 is our next Occupy the Fed march, and you and your brother are welcome to join
All right,
us.
well, maybe we'll be there.
That's actually my question because you seem, I'm sorry, you seem down here. I mean, at first it looks like you're antagonizing us a little bit, but you actually seem to agree with a lot of stuff that we're saying, even if with some other
I
items
agree.
you disagree strongly, and I disagree with some of the things you
Look,
say
I'm
strongly.
afraid that a lot of people here, if we don't change, they're not going to stay here. People are going to leave the country looking for opportunity because we're going to destroy it. If we don't roll back the government and we don't get rid of all these regulations and taxes, there's going to be no opportunity here for the young people.
Okay, see, that part, for example, I disagree with. I don't think that we need to roll back regulations. I think that's part of the problem. However, you do still seem to agree, and you said you agreed when I mentioned the fact that they're one and the same. Wall Street and the government is one and the same. People that are in D.C. are trying to protest and start the Occupy D.C. movement, and they're protesting the government. But us here, we're protesting Wall Street because it's also the government since, like I told you before, they managed to find themselves seats in the government.
Right, but
and then
you're not going to change it from here. It has to be changed legislatively and in the ballot box because it's because of the rules and regulations that emanate from Washington. Wall Street is just trying to get its piece of that pie.
You don't think that us being here has the government listening and following?
No, but the appearance is that you guys are against capitalism and business, and this is the symbol.
That's a tiny minority. Those are the diehard extremists here, and maybe some other people that are not extremists but are still pro-socialist or whatever. But I'm willing to bet the majority of people here are pro-capitalism. I'm pro-capitalism, but I don't think that means that.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. That's why I wanted to come down and clear up these misunderstandings because the movement is getting a bad rep.
A lot of people here,
it's a Marxist movement.
Here for different reasons, but there's a fundamental discontent, and the fundamental discontent with the way things are, with the state of the economy, and also with the ease with which people in government and in Wall Street go back and forth. And that's the main, and you said you agreed with that they should not be able to just walk right in the government and sit on it.
I don't care if they walk in, but if they have no power, if they have no special interest to dole out, it won't matter if they're there. But if you limit the power of government, they can't do all this harm.
If somebody from Goldman Sachs manages to become Secretary of the Treasury, you don't think that he's going to try to push and advise the president and the whole cabinet on ways to benefit Wall Street, but his sector where he comes from?
But if you take away the power of the government to benefit Wall Street, he can talk until he's blue in the face and nothing's going to happen.
He'll just try to change it. He'll try to.
Regulations are only enforced against the 99%. The 1%, it's selectively enforced just against us. So
I'm talking about you take away the subsidies, you take away the cheap money from the Fed, and you let Wall Street know, you let a bank know that if you invest poorly and you go under, you're going to lose. You let the bondholders know if you loan money to somebody that doesn't pay you back, you're out of luck. The government's not going to come in and subsidize your losses. Let business know
But the main reason that the government is so eager to come in and help is because their economic advisors are these guys. And that's a fundamental
They're getting a lot of bad advice, that's for sure.
Well, from these guys because their whole job
And
is
because-
to maximize profits
Well-
and socialize risk and just, take as many risks as possible as long as they can satisfy
But
the
they
shareholders.
can only socialize the risks if the government lets them. So we got to stop the government.
Would you be in favor of higher taxes unless if they do socially responsible things, you get tax breaks?
No, well, I don't want higher taxes. We have too much taxes.
Yeah, but if you got higher taxes, but you got way lower taxes if you invested in socially responsible acts, would you be in
but then
favor?
I don't want the government deciding what's socially responsible. I don't want the government picking winners
But
and
we
losers.
vote on what's socially responsible.
With your
as
dollar, no,
representatives.
but no, you vote on it with the money that you spend. If you want to patronize a socially
Then why do
responsible
we have
business,
government if what we say and what we vote means
we have
nothing?
government-
If only the money in our pockets means anything.
government is
then
to
only what
protect
these
our
people are
rights,
saying means
to protect our liberty, our life, our property. That's why government is there, to secure liberty. That's why we instituted it.
So
all the rest
if
of it
you
is
got
up to
higher
us.
tax breaks for investing in rights and socially responsible.
No, I
things,
don't want the government determining. That's how we get stuff like Solyndra, where Obama decides to guarantee $500 billion worth of debt, and now we taxpayers, or $500 million, we're eating it because Obama decided that was socially responsible,
Well, I'm not
and we
agreeing
lost all
that-
our money.
No, I'm not agreeing that it should be insured. I'm saying that you should get lower taxes on money that goes
No,
to
I want
socially
everybody to be taxed equally, and I want to lower the taxes on everybody because the money is much better in the hands of the people who earned it than the bureaucrats in Washington. Because all they're going to do is use it to get reelected, and it's going to hurt the economy.
But aren't the Wall Street people backing the people who are trying to get into government?
Because they want the power that they can get back. They want the special favors. We got to take away the ability. Yes, but you got to take away the ability of government to give out special favors. If we followed the Constitution, there'd be no special favors to give out. There'd be no perks.
I agree, but in that case, my fundamental point with you right now is that you should be joining this whole movement, and that the people that are listening to what the stream, live stream, or whatever, that are conservative might actually agree with a lot of us, because you all seem to think that we're anti-cap. I mean, who here is pro-capitalism? Who here is pro-capitalism? All right, that's a lot of hands. I mean,
yeah,
that's a
I know.
representative
I mean,
sample.
look, when I ran
So
for
you should be
Senate,
down here, even if it's for slightly different reasons.
well, I was at a lot of Tea Party rallies, and when I ran for Senate, I had a lot of Tea Party support, and I've been saying, hey, we got to get these movements together because in many cases they have the same sympathies. Yes, there's going to be the extremists out there that have a Marxist, socialist type agenda, but there are a lot of people that actually understand some of these problems.
Well,
But
a lot of people here are not. There are very few Marxists
I'm
here.
pro a system that works, whether you call it capitalism or not. It doesn't matter to me.
So
I just want a
so
system that
Well,
works. for
capitalism
people.
does work until government interferes, and the problem is the government interferes, things get bad, and then the government blames it on capitalism. It's not capitalism's fault. It is the
Wealth of Nations? Who wrote Wealth of Nations?
Adam Smith.
And what did he say about government intervention when the market fails? When you have market failure, what does he say about government intervention?
Well, they always blame the government.
Oh, going back to the facts. Wait, isn't he not the godfather of modern
He
day
is the
economics?
founder of economics.
Okay,
You're correct.
so what did he say when there's
Tell
market
me what he said.
failure? What did he say
Tell
about
me-
market failure?
what did he
said
say?
government intervenes. Government
yes.
has to intervene.
No, government intervenes to cause the failure. That's the problem.
That's not what he said.
Yes,
No,
well,
you know I'm right.
No, I don't know you're right. I don't know you're right. No, you
It's
didn't.
not capitalism
No.
when you have monopolies.
No,
That's anti-capitalism.
No, but government
And
creates
that's the world
no,
we're living in
but
today.
it's
You have
government.
monopolies running it.
No, but government licenses the monopolies. Without government, monopolies wouldn't exist unless they were giving people the best possible
Who
deal.
owns our government right now?
Not me, yeah. But there are a lot of people that are owning the government because the government has the influence
So
to
are you
sell.
saying- are you sticking by the trickle-down theory that's been in place?
It hasn't been in place. It's gotten a bad name. No.
What's the federal tax rate for the 1% compared
Yeah,
to
I'm
what
paying
30
half
years
my
ago?
income in
Is it
taxes.
not the lowest
No.
it's been in over 20
No,
years?
if I
Is it
earn
not?
no, let me correct
It's
you.
not?
If I earned my money 30 years ago, I would pay a much lower tax than I do today. Hold on. No, if I earned my money 30 years ago, I would pay a much lower total tax than I pay today because I have far fewer deductions and exemptions than were abound back then. And 100 years ago, the entrepreneurs paid no federal taxes, and that's when we built a vibrant economy. That's when we created the whole middle class. It was because we were free.
Unions built the middle class.
No, they didn't.
Unions built the middle class.
Unions helped destroy all the industries that they infected.
Capitalists Like
Workers were paid a lot more before
have
unions.
morals and act morally and not immorally.
Capitalism is moral. Capitalism is the only moral system. Socialism is
People running are not capitalists and they're immoral. That's why you have the conditions that exist today. It's a third world economy.
How can you expect morals out of a society that was built on greed and hope?
Well, there's nothing immoral about greed. I mean, everybody wants things.
I kind of agree with that, but don't you think it should be hard? It should be kept in check.
The free market keeps it in check.
No, it does
not.
not, because the free market allows them, especially at this point where people are making so much money. I mean,
but remember, in a free market, people are greedy, but they're also fearful. They want to make money, but they're afraid of losing money. The government comes in and subsidizes the losses. That's what lets greed cause problems when the government takes away the risk.
yes, exactly. When they do subsidize the risk, that does cause a problem. But don't you think that in itself, the free market on its own, when it gets to a point, people are just going to try to maximize profits.
But what's wrong with? But how do you maximize profits in a free society?
It depends. It depends what sector you're in.
The way you
but the way
look,
they did it here, was to take people's mortgages.
No, but that's government. That's government intervention with subsidized mortgages.
Private firms here.
But the government was backing
people's mortgages
because the government guaranteed them. Look,
they had nothing to do with
if
asking the government
a businessman wants to maximize his profits without government help, without special perks, what do they have to do? They have to figure out what consumers want and find the most efficient way to give it to them. And the more, the more you satisfy. They do. I deal with consumers who want my help. But yes, there are a lot of financiers who do nothing but speculate with money they get from the Fed on products that are insured by the government. That is not capitalism. That is destroying capitalism.
Why are you against unions? I just need an explanation.
Well, I'm not against unions. What I'm against is when unions have special laws that help enable them to extort money from employers and help drive them out of business. I mean, unions.
Isn't that just in response to the corporations doing the same thing to them?
No, they're not doing the same thing.
Okay.
Look, it's not.
Have an offshore bank account
Look,
that they don't pay taxes on.
It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that all the jobs. Hold on. It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that all the companies that were heavily unionized are the ones that have gone bankrupt. The unions played a big role in bankrupting these companies. But I will tell you something.
Walk away from a system that was working because it had faults. So
but I will tell you.
It's a tug of war. It's always been a tug of war.
I will tell you. Let me tell you. Hold on. Ford Motor Company paid its workers more money before there were any unions, before there was any minimum wage. Ford workers who were on the factory lines got paid more money in 1914 than they do today, adjusted for inflation. Much more money. No, and that was because of capitalism. He paid his workers.
With the system doesn't mean you try not to work within the system and fix it.
No.
You don't walk away from capitalism because you feel like it's broken.
No.
We try to fix it.
No, but capitalism is.
Unions walk away from
capitalism doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be restored. We don't have it anymore.
We don't have it together. We don't have it because there's monopoly.
Right. No, it's not. We don't have it. We don't have it because we have too much government regulation and taxation.
It's the government enabled monopolies. Like the
right. Well,
if like, I don't understand.
Well, what? Okay, first of all, what monopoly are you talking? No, what monopoly are you talking about?
Do you feel like Chase has kind of taken over?
Chase,
a bank?
They're not a monopoly. There are plenty of banks. But when you have a monopoly, government gives them a license. But look, but that's not a monopoly. There's
has to be a monopoly, but when you're dealing with 5 major banks, 3 or 4.
But I agree. The banks get government subsidies. I want to take those subsidies away from banks. I don't want.
The bailout shouldn't have happened. Are you saying the bailout shouldn't have?
No, I was against them at the time. They should have.
Totally.
But look, I want to get the government. Look, I don't want the government.
You fall.
Right. I don't want the government.
Step up. I didn't hear anyone stepping up and saying, I don't want the government getting involved in these rich guys.
I stepped up. I was there. But look, I don't want the government guaranteeing your bank account. I want the banks to have to prove to you that they're sound. I don't want the government guaranteeing that account so you don't care what they do with your money. I want to get the government out of banking. That's the problem.
So what we need is educated consumers, because these libertarian ideals, they work when you have an educated consumer base. But the problem is many Americans do not have the type of fiscal education that they would need to make the kind of decisions that would promote their lifestyle. And when there only is a Walmart in 50 miles of your house and you are only shopping at Walmart, And maybe you don't even know what Walmart does. Maybe you disagree with Walmart if you knew about Walmart. But so what we need to do is promote education and fiscal education to create smart consumers.
Yeah, well, I think you should give the average American a little bit more credit. People, I think, can make the best decisions for themselves. I think people can decide for themselves better than Washington deciding for them. I think people will make good choices. You know, people are going to shop around. They're going to look for a bargain. They're going to try to spend as little money as possible to get as much value as they can. I have confidence that the market
Are
will
you
work.
okay with us importing all of our goods from and borrowing money from communist China to support those lower production rates?
No, I
for the
would.
American consumer?
No, I'm not okay with it. It's terrible, and it wouldn't happen if we had a freer economy. We would produce
Don't
these
we have
things
less
ourselves.
regulations today, though?
No, we have a lot more, and we have a lot.
Do we have more regulations today than post-American Depression?
Yes, and we have a lot more than China. There's more capitalism in communist China than there is in America. That's the problem.
What's the average wage for a Chinese worker?
So you don't believe in minimum wage?
No, it should be zero.
You
It should
don't
be
believe in
abolished.
minimum wage?
Absolutely not. Why do you like?
feel about slavery? You're okay?
But what does the minimum wage have to do with slavery?
I don't know. I'm just asking if you're for it. I mean, in a capitalist society, that's ideal, right? If you don't pay your workers.
Well, actually,
on your P&L line, your employment costs.
Actually, I'll give you a little bit of history. Hold on.
That out, you save
Slavery
a lot of money,
is bad business because slaves don't work very hard. It's much more economical to pay workers. They work a lot harder.
This country was built on the backs of slaves.
No, it
so
wasn't.
They actually worked pretty hard.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't built on the backs of slaves. But no, it wasn't. You think there was slavery up north? No. But slave. We had the people working. The people that were working in the factories weren't slaves. The South would have been better if it was paying people, but that's a whole other story. But as far as the minimum wage, all the minimum wage does is set a level below which people are not allowed to work. The minimum wage just destroys employment opportunities for the unskilled workers. You know, you can't hire somebody if they don't have enough productivity.
$7.25 an hour. There's someone less skilled.
Well, first of all,
there are
it's
people that deserve less than $7.25 an hour.
well. First of all, it's not just $7.25 because you got to pay payroll taxes and
I'm a small business owner. I understand. I'll add 25% on.
Yeah, so let's say $10. Yes, there are people who don't have enough productivity to be worth $10 an hour. They don't. Now, a lot of them are young. They're 15, 16, 17. But you know what? If they can get a job at $4 or $5 an hour, maybe by the time they're 20, they'll be able to make $15 or $20 an hour. But they never get their first job because we've priced them out of the market.
It's not true in my experience. Not at all. I would say most of the people who start at minimum wage or slightly better are in that. I don't tend to hire 15 and 16-year-olds, but definitely of the 17, 18, 19-year-old entering college age and move up from there. I think that's
plenty. Look, I went to the movies this Saturday night, and I had to wait on this long line on a Saturday night to get popcorn because there was only one person working behind the counter. Meanwhile, there were 5 other stations. There was nobody there. Now, why? Because the theater can't afford to hire anybody. You think would it be so horrible if we let them hire some kids to work there? Because the wages are too high. They have to come down. You can't hire somebody if it's too expensive.
People can barely live off the wages they're making now, and you want to lower them?
You know, if you're a student and you want a job on a weekend, you don't need to support a family. You just need some extra bucks.
But what if you need to pay for college? And what if you have loans? And what if it's cheaper to go somewhere? It's cheaper for me to go out of this country and get an education.
Unfortunately, but that's because the government has driven up the cost.
Can I ask a question? Are you actually saying that people should be making lower than minimum wage?
I think there should be no minimum wage, and people should make whatever they can make. I mean, right now, the minimum wage... No, they wouldn't. I mean, first of all, I don't even employ anybody at the minimum. Everybody I employ is way above the minimum wage. You think I would pay them all minimum wage if I could, but they'd all quit.
They circumvent minimum wage laws by going outside of the country to essentially create slavery in our country.
No, it's not.
And that's where we buy all of our products from these companies that circumvent the law.
No, but if you,
a
voluntary relationship is not slavery. If I offer somebody a job and they take it, that's not slavery. They're free to quit.
What if they have no choice?
No, they always have a choice.
I mean, Nike, for example, okay, you say we can abolish the minimum wage, but we know how much Nike would be willing to pay people to make their shoes. They'd be willing to pay them 19 cents.
Look, Singapore has no minimum wage, and they have higher wages than we do, and no unemployment, and they have a booming economy. You don't need a minimum wage. Minimum wage destroys jobs. particularly for the youngest people, for the low-skilled people? Why is it that we all
So
pump
why
our
have
own
wages
gas?
been stagnant and like
Yeah, because we don't
income
have-
for the top 1% has been going up and rising way out of pace with
Yes.
the income for everyone else.
That's because of the problems we talked about. Government is too involved. Government is doing that through subsidies, through banking, through the Federal
How's a
Reserve.
government subsidy preventing a company from paying me more money?
Because they're increasing the cost of hiring you. Because of all the rules and all the regulations, you have no idea how expensive it is to hire people.
It can't cost them
No,
that much.
it
since they're
does.
paying them, the top 1%,
No,
the executives
you know,
are paying themselves so much more money.
When I
So
ran,
they must be making a
when
lot
I
more
ran
money.
for Senate, I talked to a lot of small businessmen, and they say, I don't want to hire anybody. They do whatever they can. They'll outsource. They'll use a machine. They'll get a temp agency. People don't want the government headache of becoming an employer. The minute you're an employer, there's so many rules and regulations. They're all over you, and they can
That's
sue
in order
you.
to protect us. It's in order
But
to
they
protect the
protected. They
workers.
protected
To
the
protect
workers
us
out of
from
jobs.
being abused,
But
from overworking us, from paying us nothing.
You know what
So
protects?
that's why we
no.
have unions. And
What
that's why,
what protects the workers from being abused is they can quit. Competition.
No,
They got
in
another.
a poor job market. in this
Go
job
to another.
market,
No.
Why would I quit my job in this job market?
Well, then maybe your employer is doing you a favor then by giving you a job. Huh?
No,
If
but
it's-
they're giving me a job on terms that are unfair to me, but I
Well,
have
then
no
get-
other choice. I have
no,
other choice.
but if they're giving you if you say that, hey, I can't quit because the guy that's hiring me now is making me a better deal than anybody else, he's doing you a favor. He's giving you
It's
your
not
best
that
option.
He's making me a better deal. He's making the only deal because
Well, then
all
be
the jobs
glad
are
he's
lost.
there. And what
I'm
if
glad
you,
he's there, but I wish that he would be more fair. That's
well,
it.
what's fair? I mean, if you're
I mean,
worth
what would
more,
be
he'll
fair
pay it.
would be for the management of a company to not get paid so much more
Well, no.
than the workforce. I mean, I understand. Okay,
But
there's a
you're
hierarchy.
free. Look, you're
There's a
free to
hierarchy.
quit and start your own business if you think you can do better
What
on
if
your
I
own.
don't have the funds to do that yet?
Well, then
I
be
just
glad.
I just need to support my family. That's
But
it.
then be glad that you got a job. And you know, if the
I'm
government,
glad that,
but if the
it comes
government
about
come-
being fair. I mean, you had slaves.
But this is not slavery.
No,
is wrong.
No,
This is
but
not
the
slavery.
principle that you're advocating, you had slavery back then, where slaves would
But the
prefer to
slave-
be enslaved
But
rather
the-
than to roam
no,
the streets and get
slave
killed
couldn't
or hunted.
quit. The slave had no choice. There was a guy
No,
with
they
a
could-
whip standing over
Under
him.
debt, sir.
Huh?
American people buried under mountains and mountains of debt.
Well, how'd they
Created
get?
a
How'd they
nation
get
of
all
debt
that debt?
slaves.
Government
The
government
banks
subsidized
If
loans.
a
gave
slave
them all
ran
that
away,
debt.
it would either starve to death or be killed or re-enslaved. And today, if you run away from a job, you might just starve to death and be homeless. It's basically the same thing. That's why, because of the job market and the way it is, and the high unemployment and underemployment, a lot of people have no choice but to take on the shittiest job they can find just because it's there.
But if it wasn't there, then they'd be in even worse shape. So be glad the shittiest job is there.
No, we're glad it's there, but what about it being more fair? What do you
But
think
it
about
is
that?
fair. It is fair. And if you go and say, well, let's force the employer to pay me more, what if he says, you know what, then I'm just going to fire you because I'm not going to pay you more.
That's immoral when he gets paid so much money.
But
Couldn't he
no.
see some of his income
No.
and still be a rich
The
millionaire?
employer doesn't get paid. He pays himself. I pay myself. Nobody pays
with the money from your workforce, because productivity
I
in this
generate
whole
it.
country.
But also, how about this? You know, when your boss hires you, if he loses money, he doesn't come back and say, hey, you know, I had a bad month, I lost money. Why don't you write me a check and give me back some of your wages? But he doesn't. But he doesn't go backwards and say, hey, write me a check to pay for my losses. The boss only gets paid after all the workers get their share. They only get what's
But then
left
he
over.
fires them. If a company's making less money, the boss
After-
rarely lowers his own wage.
No, but after the
his
fact.
own wage.
After the fact. But initially, the employer doesn't know if he's going to make any money. He has no idea if there's going to be anything left over at the end of the day. He has to pay all of his expenses, all the overhead, all the workers. He only makes money if there's any money left over. Nobody pays the boss. He pays himself.
Yeah, through his workforce. Because
without-
he has a workforce. So
No.
yeah, if the head of GE or whatever,
without the employer, there is no workforce. Somebody has to organize it. Somebody has to put it together.
Well,
It's
once
like
you have
he's
it
the
together, then
conductor
you
of
have
the
a-
orchestra.
Right.
Without the conductor, there's no music.
Well, no, he has managers that conduct it for him.
But who's running the managers?
Well, he is supposedly, but once you set up a company, after a certain point, it runs itself. It runs itself.
No, it doesn't.
And, yeah, it does. And all you have to do basically is sit back and take in the profits.
Oh, yeah. It's not as easy as you think.
He's got an interesting question.
Okay.
So what is your answer to your answer to companies that pay bonuses to CEOs of companies that fail?
No, okay, now this is something you got to take up with the shareholders. See, the shareholders are paying those bonuses, and I think, look, I wouldn't want to own stock in a company that's paying out big bonuses to managers. So, but you vote with your feet. No one that's the shareholder problem. That money comes from shareholders. So what I'm upset about is when the government takes taxpayer money and bails. No, it's the shareholders. Now, some of them might be poor. I don't know who owns the stock.
It's not the shareholders or the board members?
Well, the board members are voting the bonuses, but the shareholders are approving the board, and the shareholders can sell their stock if they don't like what the company is doing.
It's the whole system then. It's the whole structure that's complicit in the state of things as they are now. But the point I was trying to get at before with you being down here is just that, once again, would you recommend people that might be listening to you to kind of join into this movement, even if they believe different things than us, if, as you expressed earlier, you still had this fundamental sense that things are messed up and aren't fair.
But you want to join it.
The government is the problem, as is Wall Street,
right.
as are the people
here. I agree with that, but what we don't want, because there's a lot of people that want more from government. Government, do this, spend this, provide this. The government has nothing. It only has what it takes. And when it takes from one person and gives to somebody else,
and Social Security,
what's
get wrong with that?
No, but we get health care from the market, from capitalism. That's where we get good health care, not from the government.
That's where we have been.
Because of government involvement. That's why it's so expensive. Anything that we want. Look at this phone. Did the government give you that phone? No, but capitalism produced that phone.
Well,
all the things that work well come from capitalism. The prices of these phones are coming down every year because of capitalism. No, the government
subsidized the industries that created.
No, the government didn't subsidize those industries. It taxed those industries.
A lot of these things come from the military, which
no.
That's not. That's a fact.
No,
that's a fact.
Yeah. Huh? Well, we want to take away its power and then get rid of it.
I have a question. I'm a Ron Paul supporter. I would have voted for you if I lived in Connecticut, if you ran. But I do have a question. How do you explain, in a free market capitalistic system which we both support, I think the folks around here might agree that when Wall Street created the mortgage derivative and then the CDOs, credit default swaps, rather, off of that, I mean, that was free market run amok.
Well,
and that is where we are now,
right,
with
but if
trillions of dollars on these banks.
Right, but if the Fed didn't have interest rates down at 1%, none of these products could have been created.
Right.
That's where they came from. The whole subprime mortgage market was the result of the teaser rate, courtesy of the Fed, and Fannie and Freddie Mac being the biggest buyers of this crap. They bought up all the paper.
Right.
It was Fannie and Freddie that created the market that Wall Street was feeding. So if you took government out of the mix, if you got rid of Fannie and Freddie and the FHA, and if we had sound money and a market-set interest rate, the housing bubble never got created. There was no subprime. None of these things would have been structured.
Last question in response. Then what? Okay, fair enough. But why?
Well, how did I predict it in advance? I knew it all was going to happen and warned about it because I understood it.
And I watched him all the time. He did. Why did they hide all of this stuff off their balance sheets, the banks? I mean, that's got to be. You got to agree that we should have open balance sheets, right?
A lot of the stuff was on the balance sheets, but everybody assumed that real estate prices would never go down. It was bad data going in.
Do you think
they didn't think it was possible to lose all this money?
Do you think that the accounting should be out in the open? All these banks' books should be clear and open and in the light?
Well, what I want to do is that should be between the banks and their shareholders or their depositors. I want to get the government out of banking.
I agree.
Get rid of government guaranteed bank accounts.
Let's
have a free market.
The shareholders would be a lot less inclined to buy.
And the bondholders and the depositors.
If they knew their books.
The depositors wouldn't put money in banks that were taking reckless risks because they wouldn't want to lose their money.
Right.
So let's have banks compete for safety. They don't do that now.
Thank you.
Free competition. Yes, we should remove all the capital gains and taxes from gold and silver so people can. Well, we should remove the tax. Ron Paul's got it right. We got to get rid of the taxes on gold and silver so that we can compete with the Federal Reserve note. But it would be better if we could just go back on a gold standard and have real money.
Should Google be able to create their own currency and we use it in exchange?
Hey, if you want to. Yeah. All right, now I got to get going too because I got to. an appointment.
Oh no, I was just following up. So it sounds like you're against all regulation in the banking industry, as far as like government, and you don't think that
I
think that some
I want
regulation?
free market regulation, private sector regulation. It
Okay.
works.
I mean, you can make an argument that higher regulation could have, possibly prevented it.
No, well, look, the problem was the government was too involved. But are you saying if the government is going to
No,
insure?
I mean just more regulation on derivatives.
No, there was no. What with the Fed doing what they were doing, with Fannie and Freddie doing what they were doing, it was inevitable.
Well, I mean, maybe you'd be regulating that market more.
But
I mean, we had continually lowered and lowered regulations, and we got.
No, we weren't continually lowering and lowering them. We weren't doing that. We were layering more and more regulations. I work in the financial industry.
your commercial banking was like over. You were starting to open up those like Chinese walls, and.
But there was more. They were adding more regulations than they were eliminating. The net effect was a higher regulated market. But if you're going to insure the bank deposits, then you have to regulate what the banks do. So I'm all for regulation if you make the mistake of insuring the deposits. But if you're smart enough not to insure the deposits, you don't need the government regulation, because then you have market regulation that is far more effective. But anyway, we got to get going, because I know I got to.
I hope you'll come down here and see the show.